You are watching the Cowboys Report, brought to you today by Manscaped. Head over to manscaped.com. Save 20% off everything and get free shipping, too, with promo code Cowboys. Now, on today's show, we're taking a look, because we haven't done it in a while, how about some potential trade targets here for the Dallas Cowboys? Now, they made a move after the draft last year, before the season began, to go out and get Robert Quinn. That paid off. And they've been so heavily linked to a certain player that we'll get to. It's also worth mentioning that one there. And they could pursue another player before the season begins. Now, the Cowboys do not have unlimited money. However, between extending Dak Prescott, releasing Tyrone Crawford if needed, and the money you get from the Travis Frederick retirement filing timing, you could have upwards of $20 million. So you can make it work if you want to for the Cowboys. So we will run you through a bunch of different names, beginning with a 2-for-1. One of those Bucs tight ends. You're not getting Gronk. O.J. Howard or Cameron Brate. Brate's a little bit more expensive. Maybe he'd be willing to rework his deal. Not sure that he is, but he'd be a great number 2. Can honestly push Blake Jarwin. O.J. Howard would be ideal, especially if you can get him cheap. The Bucs say they're going to run a 2 tight end set as their base offense. I'm not convinced that Howard in particular ends up being available, but if you can rework the Cameron Brate deal, get his cap hit down from, I think it's 7 right now, I'd have interest in that. He's been able to make plays in the past. So if you can only trade for one, let me know what you guys think. Who would you rather trade for? H for O.J. Howard or B for Cameron Brate? In a bubble, I'm going to go with Howard. I think he is the least likely to be moved by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but at minimum, that'd be an awesome tight end too. Frankly, he'd probably be pushing Blake Jarwin in the end to be your legitimate starter, if not outright beating him for that role. Another tight end here I want to mention, David Njoku. Look, last year's Browns coaching staff, he fell out of favor. They just didn't like him for whatever reason. Then this current regime comes in, and they sign Austin Hooper to a then record-setting tight end contract deal, and they drafted Harrison Bryant. It was in round 4, might have been round 5. By the way, they drafted Harrison Bryant right around that round 4 range. That indicates to me they're not sold on David Njoku. Now, I don't know quite how he fits as a number 2 tight end. I think the Cowboys want that guy to block, but he flashed talent in 2018. As an athletic, dynamic move, vertical seam threat tight end, he's flashed promise before. And I don't think he'd be very expensive. I think he'd be cheaper than O.J. Howard, possibly cheaper than Cam Brate, especially once you factor in contracts and whatnot. I don't trust him as a blocker. Now, that could be an issue. But you know what I could do? Could bring in Blake Jarwin. I wouldn't really care what happens to Dalton Schultz or Blake Bell. You can keep one of them to be your blocking tight end. Because if Jarwin goes down, does anyone in the comments have faith in Dalton Schultz or Blake Bell to be a great tight end option? I certainly don't. Now, if you have David Njoku on that roster, I'm feeling a little bit better. So, again, everything comes down to cost in terms of the trade and or contract. If it's cheap, I'm all over it. I will make this question the pinned comment on the video. So if you get the ad break here on YouTube, scroll down and reply to me. Who do you want the Dallas Cowboys to trade for? A defensive name now that some of you have asked me about before, and I've expressed some interest in it. Haason Reddick. Now, he was a pass rusher at Temple, but he's played several different linebacker roles and spots for the Arizona Cardinals. Bounced around between being an edge guy and inside linebacker. Has not lived up to expectations. Now, he's a decent tackler, can still blitz a little bit. His problem is, can't cover. In 2020, in today's NFL, as a linebacker, you need to be able to cover. That's a big issue to have if you're not a pass rusher. But for the Cowboys, maybe you'd make him into that Sam, that strong side linebacker, the guy who's not going to be in coverage that much. They've expressed interest in having a type of designated pass rusher role. Think of him as an upgraded version of Kyle Wilber, if you guys remember who that was, who was mainly a special teamer, was really almost a pass rusher more than a linebacker, was just a depth guy. I think that could work for the Cowboys. Now, if Arizona is willing to sell cheaply, let's call. If they aren't and they're still asking for a lot out of their former first-round pick, then, of course, it doesn't really end up making sense in the end. But if it's cheap, I think it could make some sense for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Father's Day is coming up, and I don't know about you guys, but my dad and my granddad, they have this problem where their nose hair is a little bit long and their ear hair in particular kind of gets a little bit longer. So I'm going to get them the Weed Whacker this year from our friends over at Manscaped. You can save 20% off with promo code Cowboys at manscaped.com. The Weed Whacker is the premier nose and ear hair trimming tool. I've got one myself. I've tried it out. Doesn't like tug and pull. It's not like tearing stuff out of your nose or tearing stuff away from your ear. It's easy to use. It's simple. It's rechargeable. It's manscaped.com. Promo code Cowboys gets you 20% off the Weed Whacker right there. Check the comments. Check the description. We put that link in there for you guys. And you don't have to listen just to me here. Producer Alicia, she can confirm, women don't like it if you need this for yourself instead of just your dad. Women don't find ear hair and nose hair attractive. She's made the comment about her boyfriend having some weird nose hair. So go check it out. It's manscaped.com. 20% off with promo code Cowboys. Let's go to another Arizona Cardinal here. How about Patrick Peterson? Had to include him on here. So many of you have asked me about this before. There was simply no way I could ignore Peterson here. He would be the number one corner the Cowboys desperately need because he's better than Cheeto. He is better than anyone else on the roster. Now, he wasn't as good in 2019 as he usually is, but did miss some time due to a suspension. I get that. Makes some sense. Now, the Cardinals want to re-sign Peterson. There, as of now, hasn't been much negotiation or progress on a new deal, but the Cardinals are trying to win games right now. That's really kind of tough to do without Patrick Peterson, given their cornerback depth chart. But if you're the Cowboys and you get when the Cardinals could move him, even at the trade deadline, I think you call. Because whatever with Awuzie, Anthony Brown, Diggs can maybe be your long-term one to replace Peterson, or a long-term two. I'm calling about Patrick Peterson. So before we get to the trade, I want to remind you that I based this off of the Darius Slay trade to an extent. The Cowboys get Pat Pete, and the Arizona Cardinals get a 2021 third and Cheeto. You can let me know who says no. A for Arizona, C for the Dallas Cowboys. I almost just did a second in Awuzie, but I wanted to kind of match the Darius Slay trade a little bit more. Maybe this makes more sense around the NFL trade deadline if the Cardinals are out of contention early. I think it's about the right value, and I think Peterson, of the top two corners who could be traded, more likely than, say, as I see in the comments, a Stephon Gilmore. Had to include Jamal Adams. There was absolutely no way we weren't going to mention him. And as we've said before, it depends on the Jets being a badly run NFL team and trading away their superstar safety. The Cowboys have interest. Yes, the Jets and Adams are not close to an extension, but they still want to keep him. Adams wants to get paid or be traded. I think a payment from the Jets is probably the more likely outcome. And as things in terms of the new side of it, well, there isn't anything new on Jamal Adams. If and when that changes, we will let you know. But the video we did a while ago, everything you need to know about a Jamal Adams trade to the Cowboys on the channel in the description already. Hey, nothing's changed. That's got everything you could possibly want. All the latest around him, the cost of a trade, what an extension might look like, how Dak is tied to a Jamal Adams trade. It's all in there, so go check it out. Now, my mindset was I was doing this, I was like, okay, a lot of you guys have asked me, who's this year's Robert Quinn? And I'm not convinced there is one, but if there is, I kind of suspect it's Ryan Kerrigan, who has long been one of, I think, the more underrated pass rushers in the NFL, coming off a down year because he was a bit banged up, sound familiar? And the Redskins have Montez Sweat, a first-round pick from the 2019 NFL Draft, and then, of course, Chase Young, taken number 2 overall this past year. If there is a team trying to sell a veteran who maybe would be willing to negotiate his salary cap hit down a little bit more to make it more palatable for a new team in a trade, I think Kerrigan is the one that makes sense to me. Consistently has been an 8-7 sack guy. I know you got Aldon Smith. I know you have Randy Gregory, all those guys. I would, though, if the Redskins were actually going to be willing to move Ryan Kerrigan, I would be willing to say, you know what? Thanks, Tyrone Crawford. Frankly, I'd cut Crawford if you got Kerrigan, to be quite honest. Aldon Smith, okay, we can still rotate him in. Could still do Gregory. Could maybe move on from Dorrance Armstrong possibly. And I know NFC East trades don't often happen, but I still wanted to explore it. A third-round pick to the Redskins, I think, would be the ask price. So a little bit more than Quinn. Producer Alicia doesn't seem to like this trade. I don't want to out her because I've done it before. As our resident Redskins fan, producer Alicia, why don't you like that trade? She says the Redskins value him too much. So I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. But I did want to mention Kerrigan because if there's going to be a Robert Quinn 2.0, he's the one that comes to mind to me. If you have somebody else in mind, please let me know in the comments section. I would have very much liked to find a way to get this next player, Carl Lawson from the Cincinnati Bengals. He was one of my guys coming out of his year in the NFL draft. I had a top 35 grade on him, and he went way later. Had a great first season, like 8.5 sacks, and hasn't really quite been the same guy since then. Was hurt in 2018. I blame that for the down sack production. Barely played, frankly. A little bit better this past year, but not as good as that first season. I'm not convinced the Bengals are prepared to trade him at this time, but I would have interest, especially if it's only for a day 3 pick. The Cowboys have expressed interest in adding someone to what they call the DPR role. It's just designated pass rusher. It's kind of a linebacker pass rusher hybrid. Think 3-4 outside linebacker. That Carl Lawson fits that mold. A little bit undersized, but he fits it. And if you can get 5 sacks or so, plus some tackles for loss, and get closer to 2017 on top of that, I'm all for that. I'm just not convinced the Bengals are quite there, but I've seen many an article on it, so I wanted to include him in this one. All right, next up, Kenny Stills as a Cowboys trade target. For me, this is all about the money involved. A $7 million cap hit for 2019. That's an issue. I don't want to pay that to my number 4 receiver. That's too much money. But you can make this work. If Stills wants to and is willing to play for the Cowboys, they can work out a deal to get that cap hit down. They can reduce it. And Kenny Stills, it's like taking Devin Smith, and you guys know that upgrade button mean, doing it twice. Kenny Stills is a way better player than Devin Smith has ever been in the NFL. Like there's no way around it. It'd be a 1-year rental. I think you'd get him for a, frankly, 6th-round pick. I don't think he'd be very expensive. And the Cowboys could use a little bit more speed. Have someone to be a vertical threat who can rotate in. Now you go 4 deep in confidence instead of 3 deep. You're not going to get 2017 or 2016 Kenny Stills. Depending on his role, you might not even get 2019 or 2018. But with the speedy vertical threat being a need for the Cowboys, if he would be willing to lower his cap hit, take less money, I would call Houston about Kenny Stills. Hey Cowboys fans, thanks for watching the Cowboys Report. If you haven't already, click right here to subscribe to our channel for all the best Cowboys coverage on the internet. That's news, rumors, highlights, mailbags, film studies, and a whole lot more. And I'm making your lives a little bit easier as well with the next Cowboys Report video right here.